The president and first lady hosted Kenyan President William Ruto last week, solidifying one of the United States' most important relationships in the fast-growing continent in the world. At the arrival ceremony on the South Lawn, President Biden talked about how he had witnessed the evolving partnership between the United States and Kenya.
We're united by the same democratic values. I saw this during my first trip to Kenya as a young senator at the height of the Cold War, and watched our governments stand as one and prevail against communism. I saw it when I returned years later as vice president and spoke to students committed to upholding the principles of transparency, justice, and accountability that lie at the heart of our democracies. And I see it every day as president, as our two proud democracies continue to draw from the power of the people and the strength of our diversity to write the next chapter in our partnership. Together, the United States and Kenya are working to deliver on the challenges that matter most to our people's lives: health security, economic security, cyber security, and climate security. Let me close with this. We stand at an inflection point in history where the decisions we make now will determine the course of our future for decades to come. Today, I'm as optimistic and hopeful as I was those years ago when Kenya patriots raised that new flag high in that midnight sky. Because Kenya and the United States stand together, committed to each other, committed to our people, and committed to building a better world, one of greater opportunity, dignity, security, and liberty for all Americans, for all Kenyans.
I want to thank President Biden for extending an invitation to me to undertake this state visit, a sign of friendship and partnership and collaboration between two countries that share common values, values of freedom, democracy, rule of law, equality, and inclusivity. We are a very proud democratic nation. And today, as we celebrate our past, we are optimistic about our future.
The state dinner Thursday night was attended by several notable guests, including former President Barack Obama, whose father was from Kenya. The event marked the 60th anniversary of U.S.-Kenyan diplomatic relations and is the first state dinner for an African leader in 15 years. It's been even longer since an African leader has addressed a joint session of Congress. The last time was nearly 20 years ago, in 2006, when Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf spoke before both chambers. House Democrats have criticized Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson for turning down their request to give Kenyan President Ruto this honor. In a May 15th letter to Speaker Johnson, Democratic members said, foreign adversaries like China, Russia, and Iran are working tirelessly to subvert America's alliances, particularly in Africa. Failing to offer the same invitation to President Ruto risks sending the message that African partnerships are less valued by Congress. No one is working harder than Russian President Vladimir Putin to disrupt Africa's relationship with the West. A recent report from the Royal United Services Institute think tank details how the rebranded Wagner Group in Africa is working to consolidate and expand Moscow's strategic relationships across the continent through guarantees of regime security and geopolitical protection in exchange for lucrative mining concessions. Kenya is also helping the United States confront the spiraling gang violence that has overwhelmed the government in Haiti. Kenya has agreed to lead a multinational peace force in that country, just 600 miles south of the United States, with the first troops expected to arrive there in 3 weeks. Joining us now is Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California. Congresswoman, it's an honor to have you here. Let's talk about how important it was for President Biden to show not only the honorifics to Ruto, but also to talk about how those strategic alliances between the United States and Kenya are actually going to maybe end run those moves by Iran, Russia, and China.
Thank you so much for covering this, Katie, and thank you for having me. First of all, let me just say that I am deeply grateful that the president and Biden-Harris administration recognizes the importance of Africa as a continent, specifically Kenya. And in fact, I was privileged to be at the state dinner and then at the lunch the next day and listen to President Ruto and the president and our Secretary of State talk about the importance of this strategic alliance, but not only for counterterrorism measures or for our own national security, but also to develop these partnerships because we have a historic tie to the continent of Africa, first of all, with millions of African Americans here in the United States who are a natural partner with Africa, specifically Kenya, but also we have alliances as it relates to trade, development, healthcare that benefit both continents, both countries, Kenya and the United States. And so I was very pleased that the president and the vice president got it. Our administration understands this, and I hope that the path forward shows some successes and some follow-up to the discussions that we're having.
Yeah, and Congresswoman, another important component of Biden meeting and having and hosting President Ruto from Kenya is the fact that there's more than $1 billion in startup and tech and commerce companies that have actually invested in Kenya. Talk a little bit about why it's important for the United States in terms of its development of the relationships financially, like how that benefits us as well by maintaining these relationships with Kenya.
Sure. My district is right next to Silicon Valley. It's a district which it includes many tech individuals, tech companies that want to do business in Kenya. And it benefits both the United States, California, my district. It benefits the people of our own country because what we're doing is investing in technology in a continent of young people. I think the average age of the population on the continent is about 19 years old. And these partnerships will lead to jobs for Kenyans, business opportunities for Kenyans, as well as for Americans. And so this is an extremely important investment. And I just have to say, I was very disappointed that the speaker did not invite the president to speak to a joint session of Congress. Come on, this Congress alone, we've had the president of Israel, we've had the prime minister of India and Japan, and President Ruto and the people of Kenya deserve that respect. And so it's been, as you said, since 2006. And I think that that was a missed opportunity for members of Congress. But I want to thank all of the 11 members of Congress who signed my letter. Congressman, the ranking member, Gregory Meeks, of the Foreign Affairs Committee led a letter with myself, as well as the chair of the Black Caucus, to tell the speaker that this was an important moment that we should not miss.
Yeah, Congressman, and I apologize if I interrupted. What was the excuse given by Mike Johnson?
Well, what we were told was that, and what he said, I believe, publicly was that it was a scheduling issue. But it's like, the MAGA extremist Republicans in the House always find time to do nothing with the bills that they bring forward, which really don't do much to address the issues and the aspirations and the lives of Americans as well as people throughout the world. So they find time for their do-nothing agenda, yet they can't find time for a world leader to come speak to a joint session of Congress, which to me was outrageous.
Especially from a country like Kenya. Congresswoman Barbara Lee, thank you so much for being here and for your insight on this important topic. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for covering this.
Yes.